The sun was just beginning to rise over the airport. It was quiet, peaceful, and cold inside the terminal. Near gate 37, a man stood calmly, no suit, no bodyguards, no flashy accessories. To most, he looked like just another African traveler. But he wasn't. He was Ibrahim Traoré, the president of Burkina Faso. He chose to travel this way, humble, private, and discreet. No cameras. No press. No grand announcements. That's how he moved. He believed in staying grounded, being among the people, and blending in. His return from a high-stakes diplomatic mission in Europe was no different. He had just concluded critical discussions, talks about gold, national sovereignty, and the future of Africa. But now, all he wanted was to go home. As he approached the Air France flight to Ouagadougou, he offered a warm smile and a quiet "bonjour, ça to one of the airport workers. The man smiled back, unaware of who he had just greeted. That was exactly how Traore liked it. He boarded the plane quietly, nodded politely to the crew, and settled into his seat in business class, row 2A, by the window. No one noticed him. No one gave him a second glance. Or so he thought. Just a few rows behind, whispers were beginning to spread. A senior French executive, the CEO of a powerful energy company, was also headed to Burkina Faso. This man was used to a different kind of travel, red carpets, champagne, and VIP treatment at every step. But when he arrived at the gate, the airline informed him that business class was already full. He didn't take the news well. "I'm a strategic partner in numerous African projects," he declared, loud enough for the nearby passengers to hear. To him, that title meant the rules didn't apply. He demanded an immediate upgrade. No excuses. The gate agents scrambled. They whispered among themselves, frantically checking their tablets. But the reality was simple: business class was full. Every seat had been taken. Still, the CEO wouldn't accept it. That's when the airline called in a senior flight attendant. Claire. She was tall, white, and impeccably dressed in her Air France uniform. Her smile was stiff and rehearsed as she boarded the plane, determined to fix the situation. Her eyes scanned the cabin sharply, hunting. They landed on a dark-skinned man sitting quietly in 2A. Ibrahim Traoré was reading something on his phone, calm as ever. No designer watch. No entourage. No external signs of power. To Claire, he didn't look like someone who belonged there. She leaned toward another attendant and whispered, "Probably a mistake." Then, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, she approached him. "Sir, may I see your boarding pass?" she asked, her tone polite but firm. Traore looked up, nodded, and handed it to her without hesitation. She glanced at the pass, 2A, just as it said. But something in her eyes flickered. Doubt. Judgment. Discomfort. She returned moments later, the smile on her face now colder, more direct. "I'm sorry, sir," she said. "We may need to move you to economy to accommodate another passenger. You will, of course, be compensated." There it was. The moment of insult. Delivered not with open aggression, but with a polished veneer of policy. But behind the smile was a message loud and clear. "You don't belong here." The insult was quiet, but it cut like a blade. Ibrahim Traoré raised an eyebrow. "And why me?" he asked, his voice calm and controlled. "No reason, sir," Claire replied, trying to maintain her composure. "Just a small adjustment for our guest." "A guest more important than me," he said, still calm, still watching her. Claire didn't answer. She just smiled, a tight, rehearsed one. Around them, a few passengers glanced up, sensing something was off. But no one said a word. Traore leaned back slowly and said, with the same quiet authority, "No. I will remain in my seat." The tension had cracked the cabin air. But the storm hadn't even started yet. Claire froze. No. A man like him telling her no. That didn't happen, especially not from an African passenger. Especially not under her watch. She forced another smile, but her pride had been dented. "Sir, I insist. This is for operational reasons," she said, her tone now noticeably colder. But Traore didn't move. He didn't flinch. He looked her dead in the eye. "If it's operational," he said, "then explain why I was chosen, and not anyone else." Claire hesitated. She hadn't expected resistance, not like this. Not this calm, calculated defiance. Around them, business-class passengers were no longer pretending to ignore it. One man lowered his newspaper. A woman paused her typing. Something felt wrong. But still, no one spoke. No one intervened. The CEO had not yet boarded. He was still being held at the gate while staff scrambled to find him a seat. Claire turned and walked briskly toward the cockpit. She leaned in and whispered something to the captain. Moments later, she returned with a new plan, but no explanation. This time, she didn't go back to Traore. Instead, she turned to another black man in business class. Then another. She wasn't checking seat numbers. She wasn't reviewing lists. She was hunting, visually. Only targeting those who looked like they didn't belong. That was her second mistake. Ibrahim Traore remained seated, expressionless. But his mind was sharp, watching, calculating, listening. He didn't burn with rage. He focused with clarity. A young African man, maybe in his late 20s, looked up in confusion as Claire pointed to his seat. "You, sir. We need you to move to economy." "Why me?" he asked softly. Claire didn't answer. She just took his boarding pass. That's when Traore stood. "Enough," he said. His voice was calm, but it carried weight. "Authority. Power. You're making decisions based on skin, not on tickets. That's called discrimination." Claire turned, a bit shaken. "Sir, I'll have to ask you to sit down. Please don't cause a scene." Traore didn't move. He looked her straight in the eyes. And for a moment, just a moment, her breath caught. There was something in that stare. Steady. Unshakable. She didn't know who he was, but instinct told her, this man wasn't ordinary. To her, though, he was just another black passenger, being difficult. She turned on her heels and stormed off again, furious. "These people," she muttered under her breath in French, always making noise. Moments later, the French CEO was finally escorted on board. Claire greeted him like royalty. She offered him champagne, bowed slightly, and said, "We're fixing the seating issue, monsieur." He gave her a smug nod and walked into business class like a king returning to his throne. As he passed Ibrahim Traore, he didn't even look at him. Claire made sure the CEO was perfectly comfortable, adjusting his seat, handing him warm towels, pouring another drink. The message was loud and clear. You matter. That man does not. The plane taxied to the runway and took off into the sky, leaving French soil behind, but carrying a moment that would shake two nations. Inside the cabin, everything looked normal again. But outside that plane, history was already starting to write itself. Everything looked normal. Passengers relaxed, seatbelt signs blinked off, and the gentle hum of the engines filled the cabin. But beneath the surface, something powerful was building, a quiet storm waiting to erupt. Ibrahim Traoré remained composed. He didn't complain. He didn't raise his voice or flash any credentials. He didn't call anyone. He just watched, like a man who already knew the end of the story. Claire avoided eye contact. Something about his presence unsettled her, though she couldn't explain why. Still, she pushed it aside. Halfway through the flight, she returned to his row, that same cold smile stretched across her face. "Would you like anything to drink, sir?" she asked. He glanced up. "Water is fine," he said simply. She nodded and walked away. No apology. No warmth. No respect. Meanwhile, the CEO was treated like royalty. Claire laughed at his jokes, leaned in when he spoke, and practically applauded his arrogance. "Burkina Faso is lucky to have us," he boasted, swirling his champagne. "We're bringing order to chaos." Claire nodded eagerly, entirely unaware that the very man he was demeaning was sitting just 2 rows ahead. One woman noticed. She was an African nurse, returning home to Bobo Dioulasso. She watched the whole interaction, her face heavy with quiet disappointment. She leaned toward her neighbor and whispered, "That's our president. They don't even know who they're humiliating." Her neighbor's eyes widened, but they said nothing. The president clearly didn't want a scene. And no one wanted to break the silence. Hours passed. The lights dimmed. Most passengers fell asleep. But Ibrahim Traoré stayed awake, gazing out the window at the stars and clouds. He wasn't angry. He was patient. And when the wheels touched the runway in Ouagadougou, that patience would turn into something historic. As the plane began its descent, the cabin lights flickered on. The captain's voice came through in French and English, announcing their approach. Passengers stretched, buckled their seatbelts, and prepared to land. Claire moved down the aisle with her clipboard, still flashing smiles at the CEO and ignoring Traoré as if he didn't exist. Outside, the view was breathtaking, golden sunlight spilling over the red earth of Burkina Faso. The capital below was beginning to wake. But what no one inside the plane could see yet, was what waited. On the tarmac, a convoy had formed. Black SUVs. Military vehicles. A full presidential escort lined up like a fortress. Soldiers stood in sharp rows, unmoving. Their uniforms gleamed under the morning sun. Inside the cabin, whispers began to rise. "Why are there soldiers?" one nervous foreigner asked. "Are we landing in a war zone?" "No, no," someone replied. "That's military protocol. Maybe someone important is arriving." The French CEO smirked. "Must be for me," he said with a chuckle. "Told you, I'm a key figure around here." Claire laughed along, already planning to escort him out personally. She was ready to give him the red carpet treatment. But the plane hadn't even come to a full stop when the atmosphere shifted completely. Outside the windows, passengers saw them, Burkina Faso's top ministers, defense, foreign affairs, national security, standing like statues in the heat. Claire peeked out and gasped. "What is this?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The CEO stood tall, adjusted his tie, and said proudly, clearly, "This is for me." But before anyone could move, a tall officer in a black beret boarded the plane. His boots echoed through the cabin with each deliberate step. He moved down the aisle, scanning faces. Then he stopped. Row 2A. He raised his hand in a flawless military salute. "Mr. President," he said. "Welcome home." The entire cabin went dead silent. You could hear hearts stop. Claire's smile collapsed. Her hands trembled. Her eyes darted back and forth between the officer and the man she had humiliated for hours. The CEO stepped back, jaw slack. President, he stuttered. Ibrahim Traoré rose from his seat slowly, calm and dignified. He didn't say a word. Then, finally, he turned toward the stunned CEO, and gave him a single, deliberate nod. No anger. No gloating. Just truth, and power. The nod said it all, not with anger, not with pride, but with the calm certainty of a man who had no need to explain himself. Ibrahim Traoré stood there, composed and unshaken. Just as another officer stepped onto the aircraft, the atmosphere inside the plane froze. His voice was cold, authoritative, and final. "We have instructions," he said firmly, directing his attention to Claire and the French CEO. "You two will come with us immediately." Claire blinked in disbelief. "Wait, what? Why me?" She whispered, her voice trembling. "You are being detained for questioning," the officer stated with no emotion. "You have publicly disrespected the head of state on national soil. That is a serious offense." Claire let out a nervous laugh, desperately glancing around at the passengers as if searching for someone to save her. "No, this has to be a mistake. I was just doing my job." But no one moved. No one offered support. Because the truth was undeniable now. She wasn't just rude. She wasn't just mistaken. She had acted out of prejudice, against a man she assumed was nobody, when he was, in fact, the president of an entire nation. Ibrahim Traoré stepped off the plane into sunlight and celebration. His ministers, guards, and top officials stood ready. Just beyond the airport fence, a growing crowd of Burkinabe citizens erupted into cheers and applause as their leader returned home. The silence he had maintained throughout the flight was now met with the roar of truth. He had walked among the people without title, without announcement, and those who had judged him by appearance were about to face the full weight of justice. Back on the plane, Claire and the CEO were being escorted down the stairs in handcuffs. Passengers watched in stunned silence as the two were led away. Their once confident posture had crumbled. Their arrogance had vanished. And now, with heads lowered and eyes wide, they were ushered across the blazing tarmac into two separate black vehicles surrounded by elite presidential guards. No one spoke to them, not even the officers. The silence was deafening. But it wasn't empty. It was the sound of power being reclaimed, of dignity defended. Inside the terminal, President Traoré faced a small crowd of journalists. Cameras flashed as he stepped up to the podium. His voice, as always, was calm and composed, but his words struck like lightning. "In Burkina Faso," he said, "we do not judge a man by the color of his skin. We do not bow to wealth or outdated colonial habits. Here, we value dignity. We honor humanity. We protect our people. That is the new Africa." The moment the words left his mouth, they lit a fire. News outlets exploded with coverage. Video footage of the arrest circulated within minutes. Images of military salutes and the CEO being led away like a petty thief swept through social media. The world was watching, and reacting. Hashtags like #RespectAfrica, #TraoreRising, and #IStandWithBurkina trended globally. From Nairobi to Johannesburg, from Dakar to the diaspora in Paris and New York, African youth saw this not just as justice, but as a turning point. A long-awaited moment of pride, when a nation stood tall and said no more. Formal charges were filed the same day. Claire and the CEO were accused of public insult and discrimination toward a head of state, disrespect on Burkinabe soil, abuse of power, and attempted intimidation. The French embassy scrambled to intervene, flooding the foreign ministry with calls and diplomatic requests. But President Traoré's response was unwavering and crystal clear: this is not a colony. This is a sovereign nation. They will face justice, just like anyone else. Air France was in crisis mode. Within 24 hours, they issued a public statement, a generic apology laced with corporate buzzwords and lukewarm regret. But it wasn't enough. Burkinabe citizens called for a boycott. Protesters gathered outside local Air France offices. Other African countries began echoing the movement. What began as an incident on a plane was fast becoming a continental reckoning. In a detention center outside Ouagadougou, Claire sat in a metal chair, hands shaking. During her questioning, the weight of her actions finally broke through. She cried. "I didn't know who he was," she sobbed. "I thought I was just following procedures." The investigator didn't flinch. "You didn't need to know who he was," he said coldly. "You only needed to treat him like a human being." The CEO fared no better. Despite his political connections and corporate lawyers, the Burkinabe court ruled that he would receive no special treatment. No diplomatic immunity. No quiet exit. He would face the same justice as anyone else. His legal troubles didn't stop at the border either. International media soon revealed his involvement in multiple unethical deals across Africa, triggering investigations back in France. The mask of power he wore had shattered, and beneath it, the world saw the truth. As for Ibrahim Traoré, he never gloated. He never spoke with spite. He simply returned to the presidential palace, rolled up his sleeves, and continued the work, building roads, launching youth programs, strengthening national security, and guiding his country forward. But that flight, those hours in the air, that moment on the tarmac, became legend. A quiet man in a hoodie, a flight attendant with prejudice, a CEO drunk on ego, and a landing that shook the conscience of two nations. It was more than just a confrontation. It was a reckoning. A reminder that dignity cannot be bought, that humility is power, and that the new Africa no longer asks for respect. It demands it. The story of Ibrahim Traoré is not just a confrontation between power and arrogance, but also a profound lesson about human dignity, respect, and the way a nation can build self-respect in the modern world. Through this event, we can extract valuable lessons on how to handle discrimination, pride, and how a leader can demonstrate the strength of calmness and patience in seemingly simple situations. The first lesson is the importance of respecting all human beings, regardless of their position or background. Claire, the flight attendant, judged Ibrahim Traoré solely by his appearance, a dark-skinned man, dressed simply, with no signs that he was a president of an entire country. Claire's disrespect, though masked under the guise of following procedure, reveals a significant mistake. Judging others based on appearance or status is a grave error. This story shows that every individual, whether a president or an ordinary person, deserves to be treated equally, with respect and dignity that do not depend on their outward appearance or social position. Through Ibrahim Traoré's actions, we see that dignity and respect are the foundations of building a fair society where everyone is treated equally. The second lesson is the power of patience and composure in dealing with difficult situations. Throughout the flight, Ibrahim Traoré did not once raise his voice, complain, or react with anger. He remained silent, observant, waiting for the right moment. It was this calmness that highlighted the strength and inner power of a true leader. Those who underestimated him did not realize that real power does not always come from confrontation or violence. Sometimes, it comes simply from holding your ground and allowing the truth to reveal itself. This emphasizes that one does not need to react with rage or strong confrontation to assert authority or reputation. Sometimes, just maintaining composure is enough. The third lesson is that racism and ignorance are still significant issues in modern society. Claire and the French CEO not only showed disrespect toward Ibrahim Traoré but also demonstrated a clear racist attitude based on his skin color. This shows that racism still exists in many areas, from everyday interactions to situations where we least expect it. When Claire and the CEO did not recognize who Ibrahim Traoré was, they allowed themselves to be influenced by prejudice, taking it upon themselves to judge and disrespect him. However, when the truth was revealed, they had to face the consequences. The racism in this story serves as a wake-up call to society. It also teaches us that ignorance and prejudice cannot continue without consequence, and as society, we must challenge these ingrained biases. The fourth lesson is that true leadership does not come from showing off power or imposing authority, but from humility and an understanding of where true strength lies. Ibrahim Traoré did not flaunt his power or use his position throughout the story. Instead, he showed his leadership through his calm and patient demeanor. While the CEO of Air France and Claire exhibited arrogance and entitlement, Traoré simply stood his ground, waited for the right moment, and allowed those who had wronged him to realize their mistake. This demonstrates that a true leader does not need to showcase power in aggressive or flamboyant ways. A leader's strength is rooted in confidence, respect for others, and the ability to navigate difficult situations with wisdom and poise. Finally, this story serves as a lesson in awakening injustice. When the truth came to light, it was not just about personal humiliation, it was a powerful reminder that wrong actions cannot continue without facing consequences. When Claire and the CEO were led away, the silence in the atmosphere symbolized the execution of justice. This is a lesson in standing up for what is right, protecting values, and ensuring that discrimination or oppression is not allowed to continue, in any form. Ibrahim Traoré did not let the situation pass without a clear result. He sent a powerful message that every wrong action must be confronted, and justice would prevail, without exceptions. In conclusion, the story of Ibrahim Traoré is a lesson in respect, patience, and justice. From it, we learn that everyone deserves to be treated equally, with respect and dignity, no matter who they are or where they come from. By maintaining composure, facing discrimination with firmness but fairness, Ibrahim Traoré showed the world that true leadership does not come from flaunting authority, but from knowing one's worth, respecting others, and creating a just society where everyone is treated with equality. This story also teaches us that the values of respect and equality are not only important in personal relationships but also crucial in shaping a society that is fair and just for all its members. It is a reminder that every individual has a role to play in making the world a more inclusive place, one where differences are celebrated, and where dignity and humanity are always at the forefront. Through this story, we see that sometimes, the simplest actions, like standing quietly, waiting for the right moment, or insisting on being treated with respect, can have a profound impact, not only on the individuals involved but on society as a whole. Ibrahim Traoré's quiet power is a lesson for us all. True leadership is not about making noise or showing off, it is about staying true to your values, defending human dignity, and ensuring that justice is always upheld. The story of Ibrahim Traoré's flight became a viral sensation across social media, sparking intense discussions and reactions from people around the world. From admiration and awe to shock and outrage, the incident exposed deep-seated issues of racial discrimination, privilege, and power dynamics that many people felt were long overdue for a reckoning. The comments that flooded in were a mixture of support, reflection, and calls for accountability. The overwhelming theme of many comments was a deep respect for Ibrahim Traoré's leadership and composure in the face of disrespect. His calm demeanor, as he sat through the entire incident without reacting aggressively, resonated with many viewers. One comment read, "Ibrahim Traoré's ability to stay calm and collected while enduring such blatant disrespect is a powerful example of true leadership. He didn't need to raise his voice or make a scene, his silence spoke louder than any words could." Others admired how he embodied the values of humility, patience, and dignity, showing the world that true power does not come from loud declarations, but from the ability to remain composed under pressure. In a world where people with power often abuse it, Traoré's behavior shows us what it means to be a leader. He could have easily retaliated, but he chose the high road, one user commented, highlighting how his actions spoke volumes about his character and the true essence of leadership. Another significant theme that emerged in the comments was the shock and disbelief that such racial discrimination was still happening in the modern world, especially toward a head of state. Many viewers expressed their outrage at how Claire, the flight attendant, had assumed that Ibrahim Traoré was an ordinary passenger and treated him as such, despite the obvious signs of his authority. It's appalling that in this day and age, someone would treat a man like this just because of his skin color. It's a sad reminder that racism is alive and well, even in places we least expect, one viewer remarked. The fact that Claire had not even recognized Traoré as the president until the moment of his salute from the officer sparked fury among many. How is it possible that she didn't recognize the head of state of a country? It's outrageous. This is beyond just a mistake, it's pure ignorance, another comment said. The video revealed not just personal bias but also systemic racial issues embedded in society that many viewers felt needed to be addressed. Many comments also praised how Traoré's actions represented the strength and dignity of Burkina Faso as a nation. His decision to allow justice to take its course without seeking revenge or trying to humiliate Claire and the CEO reflected a deep sense of respect for his people and country. This is what true sovereignty looks like. No one is above the law, and this man reminded the world that Burkina Faso is a sovereign nation with a voice of its own, one user wrote. The way Traoré handled the situation spoke volumes about the pride he took in his country and his commitment to protecting the dignity of his people. His refusal to allow the disrespect to slide without consequences was seen as a powerful message to both the individuals involved and the broader global community. Many viewers saw this as a moment when a nation reclaimed its narrative, asserting that African nations would no longer be bullied or treated as lesser by former colonial powers. One of the most significant reactions from viewers was the widespread support for the actions taken against Claire and the CEO. The decision to detain them and charge them for their disrespect was met with overwhelming approval. Finally, a leader who doesn't let things slide. People need to understand that disrespecting anyone, especially someone in power, should have consequences. It's time to hold people accountable for their actions, a comment stated. People were particularly supportive of the fact that Ibrahim Traoré didn't let his position be abused or overlooked, even when those in power tried to dismiss him based on his appearance. The system needs to change. Power shouldn't protect you from consequences, and I'm glad to see Traoré holding people accountable. This should be a wake-up call to those who think they can get away with discrimination because of their status, one user passionately argued. In addition to that, many felt the actions of Claire and the CEO needed to be viewed through a broader lens, with one comment noting, "This isn't just about one flight attendant or one CEO. This is a reflection of how African leaders are treated globally, often overlooked, disrespected, and treated as inferior." Traoré's actions are a reminder that we cannot let that continue. Many comments also discussed the broader implications of the incident on African identity and the global narrative surrounding African leadership. Several users pointed out that this incident highlighted how African leaders are often dismissed or underestimated due to the legacy of colonialism and racial prejudice. It's a reflection of the historical disrespect that African leaders have endured. But this is the new Africa. A confident, self-respecting Africa that is no longer going to stand for this kind of behavior, one comment said. This shift in perspective was significant to many who viewed the story as part of a larger movement of reclaiming African identity and dignity. Africa is not a charity case. We have leaders like Traoré showing the world that we are strong, capable, and deserve to be treated with respect. This is just the beginning of a new era, another comment asserted. Lastly, many viewers used this story as a call to action for societal change. They urged for greater awareness and understanding of how everyday racism affects individuals, and how systemic bias continues to perpetuate inequalities. We need more people like Ibrahim Traoré in positions of power. We need leaders who stand up for their people, for justice, and for dignity. This incident should be a wake-up call for us all to do better, to fight against racism, and to treat everyone with respect, one viewer concluded. The story resonated with many across the world, especially in Africa, where the desire for a more equitable and respectful world is a pressing issue. As one comment put it, it's not just about this one incident. It's about changing the way we view and treat one another. We need to embrace equality and fairness, not just in words, but in actions.